Good evening, everybody, and welcome into the Smash here on Warchant TV. It is not a live edition because we have our cohort, Irish O'Fell, the managing editor, out in Pensacola. He's out west in the Panhandle tonight as Mike Norvell and other Florida State football dignitaries are speaking to the Pensacola area Seminole boosters. Everybody else from the Panhandle or maybe East Alabama who made their way over to hear what Mike Norvell had to say. So he's covering that. Mike Norvell's interview with the media should be available on Warchant TV here on the Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Forhis. We've got a two-part show for you tonight, starting with a question and answer session with Dominic Robinson. D-Rob, our lead football analyst here at Warchant.com, took some questions from Warchant subscribers about Gus Malzahn's offense, things that he's seen in his All-22 film, and then also things he's learned from reading Gus's playbook, maybe getting some intel from people who would know what Gus Malzahn wants to do in year one, if you catch my drift. Dominic answers those questions coming up in just a minute. And then Matt Lasser gives us a full report, two-part report from his travel down to Orlando this weekend, in which he heard Mike Norvell, Gus Malzahn, Tony White speak to Florida State boosters down at the Orlando club. But more importantly, a different wrinkle for that trip to Orlando is at the coaches' clinic as well. So details from new defensive coordinator Tony White as to what Florida State's defense can expect to look like, what their training is going to be like, how different that is going to be, as well as Mike Norvell's thoughts on how Florida State is changing the day-to-day operation of the football program. All of that's coming up in just a second here on The Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Forhis. And remember, if you have any insurance needs throughout the state of Florida, Georgia, or Alabama, State Farm agent Russ Forhis is your guy. He's a Nole through and through. He supports us here at Warchant TV and Warchant.com. He's done that for decades, but most importantly, he's just like you in that he cares deeply about the successes of Florida State athletics, and he donates and supports the Battle's End, Seminole Boosters, scholarships, you name it. Russ Forhis is involved. So if you want to support a Nole while also getting answers to your questions or the best coverage in the business, State Farm agent Russ Forhis is your guy. I can speak to it. I am a client of Russ Forhis. I just renewed my second 6 months on my annual policy. Easy to work with, excellent staff, very, very friendly, and tell them that you heard about Russ on Warchant or Warchant TV. If you want to go to his website and you're listening to the podcast right now, very simple. It's russforhis.com. We'll spell it for you, RUSSVORHIS.com. So, without further delay, we now take it to a question and answer session with our own lead football analyst, Dominic Robinson. This is without the X's and O's. This is more of a back and forth on what Dominic has seen in totality. Stay tuned later in the week for another X's and O's video. But for now, here's my conversation with Dominic Robinson, followed by my conversation with Matt Lasser. Hope you enjoy tonight's video.
Man, it's been it's been a pleasure, a joy. It's been a lot of fun. Just digging into the Malzahn experience, trying to get to know him, through the film, not in a traditional sense of actually talking to him and having conversations with him, although I have had a few, but more so just, it's really fun. For me, typically we spend a week trying to get to know the coordinators that we're going against. In terms of preparation for the next week. So you play the game on Friday night, Saturday, you kind of, try to close the book on that game. Then, Sunday you start to go, okay, who's our opponent? What's their, who's the coordinator and what's his personality? And you kind of just start to build that, but you only have 3 or 4 days to do that and to figure that out. And so this has been fun for me because I've got to learn who Gus is now. It's, starting in December, before, even kind of before he was named the OC, because I was diving into Brendan Marion, who is from his tree, as the guy that played for him. So it's funny because by the time I actually met Gus in person as human, personal, I already felt like I knew him so well from diving into his playbook, diving into Brendan Marion, knowing Mike Norvell as well as I did. It was really just kind of a weird thing because, he's meeting me for the first time, but I feel like I knew him, kind of the ins and outs of his personality because guys' personality really comes out through their playbook, through their play calling. I don't need to meet a guy in person to kind of know a lot of elements of their personality, because it shows, like I said, it shows in your playbook, it shows in your play calling, the types of players you recruit, all of that stuff.
First question we're going to have here is actually about the marriage between Gus Malzahn and Mike Norvell. I had a quarterback question queued up, but Hit 55 asked this in the Tribal Council, and we appreciate those of you who took the time to enter into the thread in the Tribal Council as Warchant subscribers to ask these questions of Dominic. But it's the second paragraph there. We're going to get to the UCF breakdown. That is coming, not in the not too distant future here on Warchant TV. But what Hit wants to know is, will we see any of Mike's playbook in this offense? I was hoping for Gus to call Mike's plays, which I find interesting because most of the fan base, Dominic, is the exact opposite. They are saying, including our own Corey Clark, who wrote a column and said, bring somebody else in here to just take it over and make it their operation so that Mike can look at the greater picture. What do you think about this question and maybe some redundancies or similarities between Gus and Mike?
So this is kind of a two-part, answer to that question. We'll dive into and we'll do a breakdown of the Florida State, Mike Norvell offense compared side to side with Gus Malzahn and his offense. So we'll look at some of the concepts that I believe will be marrying, and we'll look at maybe some concepts that don't quite fit together. And we're going to find out, here in a couple months, whether that got scrapped or if that got blended. So what I would say is, if you ask these guys, they would probably tell you that Mike Norvell's offense is Gus's offense. That's what they would say, that he's running a version of Norvell's offense, or sorry, Norvell is running a version of his offense. We will see, I believe, some of the Briles wide split type of stuff, just because I believe that Norvell has some elements of that stuff within his offense. And the stuff that we were seeing in the Auburn, in the Auburn days, they really lent itself to the style of football that was being played in the SEC at the time, which is actually coming back around right now, which is the use of your Y and F, which is like the H back now, the Kyle Juszczyks of the world. We're seeing the resurgence of those two positions being also vertical threats. So again, I think there will be this sort of marriage of 12 personnel, two bigger bodies that are near the core of the formation, being moved a lot. And where formations are again overloaded to one side and then switching, overloaded to one side and then motioned out of it. We're going to see a lot of that, I believe, which is more Malzahn than Norvell. But I don't believe that you're going to get rid of the Norvell playbook, for instance. I believe that they would say that the two are one and the same. Yep. So yeah, we'll dive into who Coach Malzahn was at UCF and dive into that sort of playbook or those plays. But it's not a far reach from the Norvell stuff in 2023 and 2024. They all are very closely related. It's almost like, I don't know if you would call them brothers, but maybe cousins, close cousins. They're all very closely related, with really the same philosophical approach to football.
I like that side-by-side comparison, because you'll know for Alabama, you have to have what you're going to be. There's no ramp up. It's just you have to have what you want to be. So we'll know early.
Yeah, and that's one reason why I'm really excited, is like there is no touch and feel in week one. There is no, we might see 20 different things because we don't know what's going to stick. it's going to have to be what it is, and you're going to have to commit to that, because you can't win a football game running a random smattering of plays. You got to have a true, sort of story that you want to tell. You got to have a true, bedrock of who you are and what you want to do. And you have to try to carry that out for 4 quarters. You can't switch in and out when you're playing a tough opponent. That's something that you could do. You could get away with when you're playing, a lesser opponent. And so, very excited about that.
Got 2 questions.
Did I answer that question?
Yeah. I think so. That they're closely related, but they're not exactly the same. I think is fair, because you're right. They would say publicly that it's the same thing. Offense is offense. Like, it's not quite that simple.
Yeah, it's not. It's not the same. But I think it's just like anything. If I were to hand you a story and you read it, and then I say, "Hey, tell me that story that you just read," your perception of the story you just read will be different, but it's the same story. And that's essentially what it is Mike Norvell's offense is the story that Gus told him for however long they were, working together. And so he's trying to tell the same story, but it's just his different perspective. He picked up on different points.
Yep.
There were different things that stuck to him that he wanted. Hey, man, I really like this part of the story. Chapter 7 was great. So we do a lot of that. And then I didn't like chapter 5 as much. So maybe we don't do as much, but it's all still there. It's all the same story. And that's and now again, they get a chance to write this whole new book together with all of their experiences, Mike's as being a head coach, OC play caller, and then Gus's as being now I've been in the SEC, and I've been to a national championship, and I've also been at UCF, a much lower program, and won a lot of games there. So now together, we get to write a whole new story that's different than the story that we wrote however long ago it was that they worked together. So, I think it's going to be a really intriguing, interesting, deal to see kind of what story they're going to tell with this personnel that they have.
Can't write a story book, a physical book, without paper. And hopefully those 4 new offensive line transfers are the paper that you can write the story on. We'll see about how they go. We'll look at the quarterback, though, because that's the position that everybody really wants to know about and how it's going to fit in this offense with Thomas Castellanos. And so the question comes from Night Train. Maybe some of the passing game concepts, this is what he's asking for, and what he thinks how quarterback-friendly Malzahn's system is. Can he refute how other programs will negatively recruit future quarterback prospects? I've seen a lot of this, Dominic, because of the draft profile of Gus Malzahn quarterbacks. It's not as though he's a factory like a Jeff Tedford or a Lincoln Riley, where Heisman's and high draft picks are coming his way. How do you look at this particular issue?
Yeah, so the thing that I look at is really, you look at, again, we'll look at Dylan Gabriel. The guy that I love to look at was JRP. I thought when JRP was healthy and he was there, that was a guy who's actually still, in an NFL camp without essentially having his last year because he hurt his knee. A guy that, is still able to, play professional football with, very little, film to show from his final season. So the way that I look at it is, when I look at those guys, more recently, and then I look at the SEC guys that he had, obviously Cam Newton is the one that, most people, kind of would hang their hat on. Jared Stidham is the one that I looked at personally because I thought he was certainly a talented guy, but he wasn't a freak.
Yep.
Like Cam, for instance. You watch Cam, you don't get a good feel for, I think, the scheme because he's going to make so many plays himself. And, so you look at kind of the talent level of those guys, just the natural talent level of those guys. If you eliminate Cam, the guys that he had, the Nick Marshalls of the world. He was able to get to a national title, with them, and was 1,000-yard rusher. So you look at sort of the different ways he was able to have success with these guys, JRP, Dylan Gabriel, Jared Stidham, Nick Marshall, and even Cam. That tells me to the level of creativity within and the versatility of the offense. How different can it be? Because Cam is way different than Jared Stidham,
right.
Or everybody, I should say, everyone's different from Cam. To be honest, there is not another, there is no comp to Cam Newton. You can't go recruit the next Cam Newton. And that's a real difficult position to be in, obviously, when that's the most successful guy you've ever had. Even early Bo Nix, you could say, another really talented guy. So you kind of look at all these guys and go, okay, all these guys are different, slightly different, very different. For me, that shows to the creativity level of versatility within the offense to change from year to year, or from, sort of era to era, from one quarterback era to the next. And so that's what I see, just from a coaching standpoint. That's what I see, is just a versatility within the system, that you don't have to be one guy. You don't. And for me, if I'm a head coach and I'm hiring a guy, that's actually what I'm looking for, is like, I talk a lot about position versatility within players. I think that's where the game is going. I think eventually everybody will be positionless. You're just going to put athletes out there. And I think the same thing from a coaching standpoint. It's like, I don't want a coach who can only coach if he has, the Tom Brady's of the world. And I don't also only want a coach that could only coach if we have like young Russell Wilson. I want a guy who could maybe 1 year we have Russ and the next year we have Tom Brady. And if I can run an offense proficiently with both those guys in consecutive years, to me, that shows a lot. And that's sort of what I see with Gus. He's just always had offense. So, you can knock him in whatever way you want to knock him, but just the main thing you got to ask is, like, is he scoring points? And he's never not scored points. So if that's the case, then the guy must know what he's doing.
Yeah, so you could define it, if you're going to argue for him at that point, as saying he's quarterback friendly because all kinds of quarterbacks have success in the system. That does seem to fit this era pretty well, because you could very well have a Tom Brady statue and then have a Michael Vick runner, because we're using the great examples of each back-to-back seasons because of the nature of the portal.
Exactly. And that becomes of so much greater value in today's college football, because you can't just recruit that guy, whatever it is. We could even flip it over to the defensive side, and you say you could have Jared Verse today, and you can't just go recruit the next Jared Verse, because if he's sitting behind Jared Verse, he's probably transferring.
That's right. Yeah.
So I can't just plan on every year, if you go back in the old days, you go, Andre Wadsworth and Peter Boulware were on the field at the same time. You probably can't do that in today's game. So I can't just go recruit another Andre Wadsworth, because he's probably transferring. And so if that's the case, my defense has to be moldable to the next year, when I don't have Andre Wadsworth now. I've got a whole different body type, that maybe he's not a speed rusher, but maybe he's really powerful. Maybe he's a Braden Fisk. My system has to now, be malleable enough that now I can be successful in that way. So that's the way that I would see. That's, to me, if I'm, sort of recruiting, I think that would be the number one sort of recruiting pitch, is just, hey, does Gus have offense? Period. Just look and tell me, over a 20-year period, does he have offense? Who would you put against him in terms of scoring points? And there's not going to be a lot of names that are going to go over that. So if you're a quarterback and you like scoring points, then you should probably take a look.
The next question is about coloring in the gray area, because you're saying he can win with two different types of quarterbacks in terms of their skill sets. It could be run heavy with less than stellar arm, or it could be rocket arm and mobile, but certainly not a runner, or something in between. So if you were devising based upon what you've seen on the film, this is a question from Venetian Salami. I'm particularly curious about what types of quarterbacks are optimal, average, and suboptimal fits for the Malzahn offense. And he goes and expounds on that in the middle, but he says at the end, and I like this, why do I care? It predicates the types of quarterbacks we should invest our recruiting resources in. I like the pragmatism there, Venetian, but just in terms of what you've seen from Gus and his different stops along the way, if you could build a quarterback, what do you think is the best type of quarterback? And then Cam Newton notwithstanding, because that's a great fit for everybody.
Right. Yeah, I think that's that's an interesting question, just in terms of, in all honesty, I don't know that the answer is different for Gus than it is for anybody who is going to coordinate an offense in 2025, which is, you want a guy who can make the throws in terms of accuracy, but also is athletic enough to get you a first down on 3rd and 6 when nobody's open. And to me, I don't know that there's any, I've heard Saban talk about it. I've heard Kirby talk about it. I've heard Sark talk about it. I mean, all of these guys who are brilliant defensive or football minds, Belichick, all these guys, they all are talking about the athleticism of the quarterback and his ability to make plays. Todd Monken this year, was talking about it with Lamar a lot. There's quarterback's ability to make plays when when I don't call the perfect play is the guy that we want. I mean, Todd used to talk about it a bunch with Stetson Bennett. And I got to know Todd, pretty well as he'll let people get to know him, which he's very, very guarded guy. But he was very forward on, like, man, Stetson Bennett drove him insane because he would consistently, and I had a guy like this at the high school that I coach, so competitive and athletic and had such a great belief in himself and his athleticism that he would consistently look at things, maybe the right read, and go, nah, I'm going to handle this on my own, and either push the ball somewhere else or just tuck it and run. And you'd want to strangle the guy, but at the same time, you don't want to kill that competitive fire, that competitive nature. So to me, like, I don't know in today's day and age that you can go recruit the perfect guy in terms of physical abilities anymore because of what we just said. If I go get that guy and then the next year, what if the best guy available isn't the 6'4" pocket passer? It's the Tommy. Mm-hmm. It's a 6 foot, Kyler Murray version. Well, I'm not going to pass on that guy if that's the best guy to lead my team. To me, the things you go look for are the intangibles. You go look for things that guys do in terms of loving football. You look at maybe a guy who plays multi-sports. You look at a guy who, maybe I love, again, with me being a coach's kids. Obviously my sons are coach's kids. You look at guys like that because they know ball, they love ball, they've been around ball. They can talk it, they can walk it, those types of things. To me, you're looking for that more though than the physical intangibles, because I just don't think in today's day and age, I think from year to year, from week to week, sometimes you're going to have to take on a different form of offense. But more than anything, I would just say, if you're going to be in a Gus Malzahn offense, I go back to the Jared Stidham example. You got to be athletic enough that I can call, QB draw on 3rd and 4 against Alabama in the Iron Bowl and feel like you're going to get that. You're going to make that guy, you're going to fall forward and make that guy miss. And that's what you need. And then again, you got to be able to make the throws also, which I showed a couple clips where the guys are running sticks versions, and he's having to put the ball outside the hash, on the run. It's like those are the guys you're going to want, but there's never a time where you're going to turn down a top 20 quarterback because he doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Physical fit. Not if a guy doesn't fit because of character, that's a definite thing that you need to make sure you pay attention to. But you're not going to turn down a guy. To me, I don't think if there's something physical about him that we don't like, but he's definitely the 10th best guy in the country. Like you go get that guy, and then you figure it out. You don't tailor your scheme to the personnel. You don't run a scheme and then hope, and recruit to that personnel anymore.
Yeah.
Your personnel, your scheme needs to fit the best personnel you can get, because the parity is so much greater also. And that's a big point that I think is, where Florida State is struggling, or we struggled with for so many years, was the teams in the conference were so much closer in terms of talent than they had ever been. So you can't just take a guy and then just, or you can't just run a scheme, and again, Coach Andrews, who I love and I owe my life to, you can't just run Coach Andrews' scheme out there, the same scheme that you've been running for 20 years, and then recruit the same guy, the Bryant McFadden's of the world, and just go, okay, good luck, B-Mac, run that same scheme that you've been running for that they've been running for 20 years, because he's now going against Phillip Rivers,
right?
And an OC who knows what the heck you've been doing, because you're doing the same things that you've been doing for 20 years. You just can't do that anymore. Your scheme has to start to, it has to be adaptable to the times and the people that you get. You just got to go get the best people.
Yeah, it's Florida State shoes on the other foot this year. You need to lean on the reality of the parity in order for hope to, to be there for this year. Here's the final question for today's series. This is from B-Ham, FSU. Thank you for the question. Watching the Wildcat breakdown, which was from part 1, that link is at the bottom here of this video. The quarterback is typically a showpiece. Do you think Gus leaning on that formation, given Castellanos' ability to be an extreme running threat and just an overall great athlete, he could possibly run it or catch it, right? I don't know if Gus has had somebody that's as good of a, quote, running back at quarterback. He's had a couple, B-Ham, but this is a nice question. What do you think about Wildcat and the possibilities with Tommy Castellanos, Dominic?
Yes, this is a great question, and I'm upset that I'm not actually prepared for this question, because I have the perfect clip for it. You can probably YouTube it. Cam Newton lines up at Wildcat, and they throw him a fade ball, and he catches it, and it was, he looked like a first round wideout. And so to me, that just illustrates exactly what I'm talking about, in that I hope you guys are getting the feel for Gus's creativity through some of the breakdowns that we've done, and just us talking about Gus, in that you should be knowing and expecting anything can happen. And that's part of why you want a quarterback like Tommy and a running back like Cam Davis, who has some versatility. These are the things that the Brendan Marions of the world, which I think he got from Gus, and that guys like Gus love, is they're going to find a talent that you have, then they're going to spam that thing. They're going to keep hitting that button. And so if you're a receiver that can throw it, then you're going to be throwing a pass. If you're a quarterback that can catch it and make guys miss, we're going to put you in space and let you make guys miss. Now, I don't know to what extent they'll do that, but I would be shocked if we were sitting here in week 4 and saying, man, we haven't seen Tommy line up in an untraditional spot and either catch a pass or run a reverse or something. Because that's all I see when I watch the Gus Malzahn offense, is him putting guys in positions. From a creative standpoint, man, he loves his gadgets. You can see him there. You see it. You see one a drive, it feels like, and it might even be more. Sometimes you get 2 in a drive.
It's scary how much time flies, because I'm looking back for Cam highlights, and it was against Ole Miss on the road. They did it against Ole Miss. And
Okay.
I'm thinking I'm going to see the year 2013, 2014. Of course, it can't be because Nick Marshall was the quarterback in the championship game. But it's 2010, 15
Wow.
years ago now that Cam Newton was. I mean, that's kind of hurtful, Dominic. I
That
don't know.
is,
That hurts.
yeah, that's tough, man. That one gets me because that means my second son, my middle son, was just born. He was born in '09,
Wow.
and so that he's already a freshman in high school. So that means like that was a long time ago. He's 15, so I can't. I wouldn't have thought that either. I was thinking, yeah, my brain went to, like you said, 2013, 2014, not 2010. So
Not cool. But what is cool is the breakdown that's coming next. This is the part where we promote what's coming next, and it's a part 2 of Gus Malzahn's offense at Auburn, with some questions from the very same thread that I pulled from for this Q&A session with Dominic, where we're talking about a few things, finishing up thoughts on fire alarm principles and how Gus forces communication, rapid communication at the snap, but then also some questions about the quarterback run, and that's coming up. Dominic, I know you're excited to share that with the people. We'll be publishing that this week on the channel, and then UCF follows. So a couple more giant installments of Gus Malzahn. So you're going to be thoroughly prepared out there, thanks to Dominic, for what Gus could be bringing to the table. I would say this has been pretty comprehensive. Would you agree, Dominic?
Yes, sir, man. I love it. I love diving into, like I said, getting to know Gus. The guy's going to be, calling our offense, and it's been fun to kind of figure it out. What is he going to do? What did he used to do? Where has he had success? Where has he had some struggles? And again, kind of think through, like, what are people negatively going to say in terms of recruiting? And what are we hearing that's truth? And then what are we hearing that's just based off of what people's emotions are? And that's what I love doing, diving into the film. Is like the film tells no lies. People say Gus doesn't want to push the ball downfield. Well, here's the film. You tell me if the ball's going down the field or not. People say he's never had 1,000-yard receiver. Well, here, you look at these guys. You tell me if he's had the caliber of receivers that we have now. So it's that's what I love about the film, man. Tells you the story. It gives you the truth, gives you the facts, and then you can take it from there wherever you want to go.
Closing thoughts coming up next right here on the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Voris. Dominic, we appreciate the time as always. Look forward to doing some breakdowns with you again here in the near future.
Contact Russ Voris for an auto quote today.
Matt Lacerda was on the road this weekend covering Mike Norvell's Booster Series. It had seemed to me, Matt, like it was going to be just Mike Norvell hitting the road. At least that's the way it was looking on the marquee. But he was flanked by his new coordinators and new assistant coaches, and or a repurposed assistant coach in John Papuchis for the Booster event in Orlando. First of all, wanted to get your take on the broad event itself with the fans. I'm going to ask you some questions about the coaches clinic stuff, because that is something that, a booster that lives in the Orlando area didn't get to see. So some more value for everybody. But what was the Booster event itself like, attendance-wise? I heard it was pretty well attended. Attitude in the building. Just how did it strike you on Saturday night at the show that Florida State put on and the message that was delivered?
Yeah, it was definitely full. I think there was one empty seat maybe I saw, and that's because me and some of our other beat writers that were there, we didn't want to sit too close to each other, so we left the seat in between us open. But that was the only empty seat I could see in the whole place. Like barely, Mike wasn't even sitting half the time. He was standing in the back. Gus wasn't even sitting. He was standing in the back when it wasn't their turn to speak. Overall, I thought it was a pretty good message. I think Mike kind of took ownership for the 2-10 season. He even, at one point, he was starting to say, like, I don't want to waste this opportunity of learning from this, how we can bounce back from this. And one guy screamed in the back, like, we already forgot. And he goes, yes, thank you, but, like, I can't waste this. Like, he made it a point to say, like, he wants to use that as motivation. He wants his guys to be pissed off from that. And it's not even the new guys, right? 31 newcomers already in. He wants those guys who are pissed off to try to keep that going, or like that they're still mad at Florida State. It looked like that, even though it wasn't them exactly, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so the back of the room, there's a guy yelling. What was the crowd interaction like? Were they rowdy? Did they have some liquid courage? Was there laughter? Was it tense? Because I could see where it could go any direction as Mike hits Pensacola tonight. That's where our own Irish fella is covering that particular event. I could see where different rooms have different feels to them, but how did it feel to you with just the way that the people were receiving the message and the interactivity back and forth with the coaches?
It was definitely more rowdy. To put it in perspective, so the event was, we had media availability at 5:30, and then the event was supposed to start at 6:30. So we went in at 6:30 to think the event's about to start, whatever. It was empty because they had the meet and greet first, and there was an open bar and all that, or not open bar, cash bar. And there was, between when it was supposed to start at 6:30, the actual event speaking and stuff didn't start till 7:30, 7:45. So there was ample time for people to get a little lubed up and ready. So it was they were pretty rowdy. Like I said, it was fun. It really, I think the message was really good. And then the coordinators, to talk about them a little bit, Gus has done this as a head coach for how many years? He knows how to sell and do the pitch, and he was really good at that. I wonder how many times he had to answer the questions about sign stealing when it came to the 2013 national title game, because I saw on the boards people talk about them asking him about it when they met him in the meet and greet, and then he addressed it in front of the crowd, in front of everybody too, because someone else yelled out that he was stealing signs. So I wonder if he's going to get annoyed if they keep putting him on tour answering that question over and over again. But it was fun. He definitely, because he even said, he was like, yeah, this is a place where you can win it all. And I know that because I was on the other side when it last happened. Yep. So you could tell it's good to have two of those kind of guys in the room with him and Mike who have that kind of experience.
I was just, and this is just a small thing for me. I'm surprised he wasn't on the marquee, because to me, that's a selling point. When you make a hire like that, it's a selling point of new, different. And of course, Tony White works the room as well. But Gus has been there for SEC type events like this, in a room, having to control the room. That's where Tony White wants to be next, is driving a situation like this. And how did he strike you in the public setting? Well, not the coach's clinic, but the public setting. How did he handle that?
And Tony White was good. It was kind of funny. So his one little thing, he was like, yeah, I'm glad Mike gave me the job this time, because I guess he called Mike for a job at Memphis and Mike said no. That was a point he made sure to make and lighten up the room. I thought he was good. Something interesting, and I put this on the Renegade room before, that he said was everywhere prior. He said specifically, corrected himself and went back to, well, prior to Nebraska, we got to run our defense, or my defense. So that kind of confirmed the rumors to me of that Matt Rule wasn't letting him run it the way it was, and that's probably why he left. Again, that was just a little thing when you're just listening and you heard it come up. But in general, he was really good. He liked answering about how, again, physicality. Physicality is going to be a big thing for them, and he's still kind of enamored with Florida State. It seems like in his first 2 months on campus, because he had never been there before, and how the history and all that kind of stuff. He's like, yeah, this logo meant something in the 90s. This was a big deal when I was wherever he was as a kid or playing football. Florida State was a big deal, and that was his kind of selling point, is how he's still in awe of FSU.
It's true. This is somebody who's my age. We're starting to get to that place where they're hiring people my age. I'm a little older than me, but Tony's right there. And in the 90s, even in the early 2000s, it was shocking that Florida State didn't push through in the Ricks era. And then obviously we all know how that went. I went to the school of last decade. But I'm going to stick with Tony White then, because you got to see and hear content from the coaches' clinics. So this is a little bit more technical in some ways. I'm going to ask about Mike Norvell. I think he spoke more broadly than he did about X's and O's. But getting to know Tony White's an important deal here. We all kind of get the sense of what Gus Malzahn's offense is going to be about. He, as Dominic Robinson put it, he and Mike Norvell are kind of like close cousins in the way that they run an offense. So you've seen it. Also, you've watched Auburn football in the last decade, and you might have seen a UCF game or two. So you kind of know what Gus is about. Tony's more of a mystery, even though we know what a 3-3-5 is and a multiple front is, because you might run 4 down as well. You might have seen a Nebraska game or two. People want to know about this new up-and-coming defensive coordinator. So what did he hit on in the coaches' clinic, and what are some things that stood out to you about the way he delivered those messages?
Yeah, so the main thing, his presentation was about dominant contact or tackling. And it was kind of cool because it gave a glimpse into what practice is going to be like. I've always wondered, because Florida State obviously wasn't physical last year, what's the difference between watching a team that's physical practice and a team that's not? What differences do you see? Because obviously in today's age, they don't tackle to the ground anymore anyway. Just how do you teach that physicality? Well, he was big on the snap of contact when you get to the runner kind of thing, went into like very technical with tackling, and even showed drill by drill. Hey, here's the drill that we use for this. Here's it in 11 on in practice. And look, here's it happening in the game. And he specifically would always pick the same player that went through all three of those stages from drill to practice to game. And he went over profile tackling, which is straight on, and then angle tackling. And it was kind of cool when you saw it come to the perimeter, how it was a combination of the both, where angle tackling is where you get set, you drive your shoulder, you get that snap contact. Again, the biggest thing was the snap contact to be physical at that point, and everything kind of lines up hitting the other player. And then angle is just you're kind of pursuing the ball, and then you get to that, but you're taking a straight line angle to get there. And that was kind of the main part of his presentation, but he made it very clear right at the start. So he obviously introduced himself at the beginning of it, went over some basic stuff, went over his defensive staff, which Dimitri Emanuel has now moved over to the defensive side. That was something we had heard, and it got confirmed in his presentation. But when he started getting to the technical side, he said Florida State's going to be physical. He said a word I can't say on here, saying that the offensive coordinators, opposing offensive coordinators, are going to say something, and that's going to be what they want. They want to be physical. That's a big dominant contact. That's a big thing that he said from the first meeting that he got to Florida State that they're already trying to install that.
So without getting too technical, because as much as we love the game, we're not coaches that are there for the for the reason that they were attending for a clinic. Those drills, relative to what you've seen in the practices that we've been able to cover, the access we have, do they look different? And if so, how different do they look, just from what you could see in those small clips?
I thought it looked different because it was more like showing contact, right? Like I think the closest thing I could think about it was, you'll remember, again, it's hard to explain because like everyone watching this doesn't see practice, but you remember the little DBs drill they do at the beginning of practice, kind of off to the right side, where you kind of go up, and it's kind of like a getting off a block kind of thing. Yeah, I guess that's the closest thing, but that's the only part of practice we really saw that in, if you think about it. Then, other than that, you got the dummy out, and you're over and over, like making sure your whole body lines up at the same point of contact. And he even showed us the difference of like, look, this one's not good, this one's good. So it's gonna be, I guess, when we're at practice, hopefully if we're allowed to practice, I can show you as well better. But yeah, it's definitely just more physical, kind of making sure you have the right contact and hitting.
Sounds like he wants to hear a certain sound too, almost like a baseball hitting a proper way. You could tell if a baseball hits the mitt the proper way versus the webbing or whatever. He's looking for the pop.
Yeah,
is what.
And the word he used over and over again was snap contact, snap on that hit.
Mike Norvell spoke as well in the coach's clinic, and this was it sounded like introspective, but then also motivational more than it was about philosophical X's and O's. But tell me about Mike Norvell's message and a couple of things that stood out. The first one I want to hear about is the Unconquered Challenge. This is something I've not heard about before. Maybe they've been doing it. Is it relative to mat drills or off-season work, the Unconquered drill, or is this something they're going to institute in practice? Let me know.
So it's relative to everything. It's basically you split the team up into, I think it was 16 or 17 guys. And think about it as, the best way I can describe it is like, think about Hogwarts and points and houses kind of thing. To where it's, if you are there on time, you get a point, or you do well in your workouts, you get a point. Oh, but if you're late and you don't communicate, he's big on communication, saying how, look, if you're sick, just call me and tell me you can't come today. Like, that's fine. That's what we want. We want you to be able to communicate. If you communicate that, there's no deductions. But if you're late or no show, stuff like that, you get point deductions. And it's even like things like good deeds. So if you've ever been to the Moore Center, you know that there's normally some older ladies who work the front desk, helping them with their bag as they walk out. If the coach sees it, you get a point. Like, it's just a bunch of little things that we all do, or you want to promote it with the structure and stuff, that you get a point. And there's a winning team, Seminole Scholar, again, that's also a point. Like, it's just a bunch of stuff like that.
That makes sense. I have to allow for it. I was a Star Wars kid growing up, but we'll get a Harry Potter reference because the generations, they come and they go. That makes total sense. It also gives you a bit of a window into things they weren't seeing, or maybe some reports that they got that weren't so positive, that they need to make this an emphasis moving forward. Tell me about, beyond just the little things that they're looking for players to do to kind of buy in, Mike Norvell, his attitude about what went wrong last year, and then some of the things he's looking to right on his own end, not just with his players, but himself.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that really stood out was him talking about his body language. That wasn't something we've really heard him talk about. Obviously he has to look at everything with the program when you go 2-10, like everything you need to look at because everything went wrong. But it was cool to see him kind of be transparent like that because he hasn't been like that in a normal setting with the media, saying that his frustration got to him and he let that show in his body language, and he had bad body language. And it's hard for him. Like, obviously, if your coach has bad body language, your players are they're going to have bad body language. You need to lead by example. And he was pretty transparent in saying that that's his fault. That's on him. And there's a bunch of other stuff that he went over. Like, he even said, like, I don't want to rent players at Florida State. I don't want players to come to Florida State to be the highest paid player, right? There's a bunch of stuff, and talked about distractions. To the high school coaches he was talking to, he said, your distractions for your players are offers and stars. For me, it's NIL. And even use space for COVID. What happened during COVID? They were all sitting next to each other in meeting rooms. Then you have to spread out, be 6 feet apart. And he's kind of said, like, he wants to get back to that tightness because once they spread apart, that's when they started winning games. So he said it could have been tighter if they like had been closer in those meeting rooms and stuff like that. Maybe had seating charts. And that's what he's trying to get back to. It seemed like, and again, and then a big focus for this year is win today is what he said was he wants them to go day by day. Cause he even said this in the booster thing a little bit, that all you have is today and you need to do better at that day. And have, instead of going, what everyone wants to get better at everything, right? Like you go out every day, like, what am I going to get better at? Well, everything. I want to go to the gym and hit legs, arms, and chest, like whatever. No, have a specific goal each time you go out into practice to meet that goal. And then you'll start getting better. And if you focus on one different thing every day and you get that 1% better.
All right. So he's got mantras and he's got the talk about the things that they're going to fix. That's one thing. But then following up and advancing it through action is obviously what everybody wants to see. So I'll ask you, Matt, because you're in the room, you felt what they were saying in one setting and another, one for boosters, one for other coaches and peers. What is it that you want to see next? You take all of these things that you've heard, and now we're getting to either tour of duty and we're getting to spring camp. Now, does this change what you're looking for, and how does it impact what you want to see?
I think, and then one of the mantras I forgot was desperation. He wants this team to be desperate to win and desperate to win every rep, stuff like that. And I think that's kind of what I want to see on the practice field is guys practicing hard like that, being more physical, to go back to the Tony White thing. I think the physicality is the biggest part because once you get there, I mean, it solves a lot of problems, right? Like if you're physical on the offensive line, the run game is going to be a whole lot better. If you're physical on defense, you're not going to see players giving up. I remember I read on the board when I was going through and putting all this information out from this weekend. There's a lot. If you haven't looked at it, go skim through it or whatever. People were saying, like on defense last year, one guy would get to the ball and then it felt like everyone else would give up. Not give up, but like not also run to the ball, like not gang tackle them. And that's something that I think goes with this desperation physicality is to keep going until the whistle's blown. Keep going until you see the guy's knee hit the ground. Like it doesn't stop.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, that's part of the 3-3-5 in general. Is the swarm effect is one big part of the philosophy of a 3-3-5, whether it's Tony White or some of the others that have run it across the country. We'll see what all comes next. Matt, we appreciate all the coverage from down there in Orlando. Are you still there? Where are you these days?
Yeah, I'm there right now. As we record this, on the Smash when it comes out, I'll probably be back in Tallahassee. I'm driving back up today. Had to stay down here for the Super Bowl. Nice. Made it easier. I had an event I had free drinks at, so I had to stay. I didn't really have a choice.
Well, that's what the Smash is for, too. For those of you that are out there watching the program tonight, we really appreciate Matt's time. We appreciate Dominic Robinson's time. And if you haven't checked it out on the channel yet, by now, Mike Norvell's availability from Pensacola is available on Warchant TV. So make sure you hit the like button underneath the video. Subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free. And if you have any insurance needs whatsoever, hit up State Farm agent Russ Voris. He supported Warchant.com for more than 2 decades now. He was one of the OG supporters of Warchant.com, and he supports Florida State athletics top to bottom. You're talking donations, endowments, battles, and you name it. Russ is as big a Nole as there is. RussVorhis. That's how you spell his name. Add a .com at the end of it, and you can be a customer of his, State Farm agent Russ Voris. Matt, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And to all of you who watched, thank you very much. Give us a like on the way out, and/or stay tuned to Warchant TV for the next big piece of news from Florida State's offseason.